Hi, I'm Christopher Walker with Closely Observed Teaching. In this video, I'm going to give you my 5 tips for successful online teaching. So many of you probably find yourselves in the same sort of position that I'm currently in, along with the other teachers here at my school, International House Integra Bielsko-Biała. Now we're all working effectively remotely. Our classes have been cut short because of a certain virus spreading, and we're delivering most of our lessons online. It's been a very fast learning process, but I'm lucky in that we've got the support of some very clever people here and also some very patient students on the other end of the line. So after a couple of days of teaching online and some days of training, I've put together a list of 5 things that I think are not immediately obvious, but are worth considering as you make the switch to online teaching. So the first one is the importance of good audio technology. Now I record this and other videos using my lavalier microphone, currently plugged into my phone, and I've also got a good set of headphones here. I've ordered one of those headsets with the microphone attachment like this, and I'll be switching to using that as soon as it arrives. It'll have a USB connection, so it should work on all of my different devices. For the phone, it also has just the usual audio jack. This is the Logitech G Pro. I might make a video when I've got that so that you can see it in use and see what the quality's like. But why is it so important to have good audio technology? Why can't you just rely on the microphone and the speakers in your laptop or your handheld device? Well, it's not so much about communicating as a teacher out to the students. It's more about the other way. When the students speak to you, you will find that it's quite difficult sometimes to hear them. And the speakers that you've got on your device might not be powerful enough or sensitive enough. And having proper box headphones or the plug-in sort will make a big difference. You really need to be heard by your students, so microphone technology is important, but you'll be in a quiet place. You'll be able to control your space a lot more than most of your students can. So, for example, last night I had a lesson, an individual class with a student who normally comes here for face-to-face lessons, but yesterday we met in the evening because he couldn't do the lesson at his workplace. He was in his kitchen using a tablet. Occasionally he put his hand over the microphone that's built into the tablet. Sometimes he had to pick up the microphone and move it closer to hear me. I don't think it was a problem for him to hear me in terms of what I was producing. It was a problem on his side with the device, but it meant that with all the sounds going on around him, it was quite difficult for me to pick out what he was saying. So it's very important to have at least the bare minimum here so that you can cut out other distractions. The second tip. Now, a lot of people have talked about the different devices that you can use, different apps and programs and platforms for delivering these online lessons. The majority of people I've spoken to have settled on Zoom as the best option, and that's the one we're going with at the school. Now, I'm very happy with Zoom and I like using it, but here's my tip. As you start to test whichever platform you go for, make sure that you test the platform on the greatest variety of devices possible. Now, this reminds me of my early days, about 20 years ago, when I had my heart set on being a website designer, and I would make a web page that looked fantastic on my computer, you know, running Netscape 4 or whatever it was. I would publish it, and then I'd excitedly go around to the other people in my block in the dorm and say, hey, check out my new website, and they'd load it up and it would look horrible. Everything was in the wrong place, and that was because they were using a different browser. Now, I hadn't checked the cross-platform compatibility of my web page. You need to do the same thing as teachers with things like Zoom. So for example, you take it for granted that you can do everything the same way regardless of the platform. It's not the case at all, not when it comes to the devices themselves. For example, in Zoom, if you're using a phone like this, when you go into the whiteboard, you can't type text onto the screen. You can write with the stylus, you can draw shapes with your finger, but somebody on a computer will be able to just type away in a text box straight onto the whiteboard. So that means that if you're doing a kind of vocab hunt or something, or a race between students using the whiteboard, whoever's using the keyboard will be at an enormous advantage. The other student won't be able to produce things nearly as quickly. A good example of this was yesterday in my C2 proficiency class. I only had 2 students. One of them was on her phone, one was on a computer. And I asked them to look at a picture, and then I loaded up the whiteboard, got rid of the picture, and had a table with like 2 columns with the students' names at the top. And I said, okay, you've got a minute. How many words can you think of that were in the picture? So the first student on the phone types in C-H-U-R. She'd seen a church in the picture and she wanted to write that. And it was a really slow and laborious thing. Meanwhile, the other students clacking away, I can hear it like like that, and suddenly, poof, a whole list of vocabulary appears, which is great in terms of language production. But if you wanted this as a fair game, it really wasn't a fair game at all. Another more startling discovery that I made was that you have a chat feature in Zoom, and you can share documents through this chat feature. So again, what I did with another group class, this is a class of 8 students. So I had the same task, picture, but I asked them to recreate the picture on the whiteboard. So they were drawing it collaboratively. One person would draw a bit, then they would talk about what was in the picture, try to remember what was in there. So they were in their breakout rooms for this. And each group, as they were going along, when the time limit was coming to an end, I went into each breakout room and I saved the image. So it put it into a folder on my computer. And then when we went out of the breakout rooms and they lost their whiteboards, because when you're in a breakout room, the whiteboard doesn't transfer back in, I wanted the students to be able to see the pictures that they'd made in each different group. So I posted the image to the chat, and the students on the computers were able to then download that image and have a look at it. That was fine. But the students on their mobile devices, I had a few students on iPhone and on Android devices, they couldn't see the download file. They could see the chat box and they could see that somebody had written a message, but they couldn't see the file, so they weren't able to download it and view. In the end, what I did was I opened the file on my own computer and I shared that screen so that they were able to look at it. But it did mean that the students on the phones weren't able to take away a kind of written record of that part of the lesson. So that would be another area to consider. Always test across as many different devices as you can. Also, so that you're a bit more familiar with them, you can offer a bit more guidance and tech support when there are problems. There are always going to be problems. Okay, number 3 in this hastily put together little list for you. Things like Zoom have a huge number of features. They're really powerful. They have lots of great things that you can try, all these tricks. Roll them out slowly. There are a couple of reasons for this. First of all, you don't want to overwhelm yourself as a teacher. For many of us, myself included, online teaching is a completely new game. I just don't know much about it. And I don't want to try to have like a list of 20 features in my head and like, oh, I could use this, I could use this, I could use this. If I try to put all of those into my lessons, I will make mistakes and I won't deliver the best kind of lessons. And at the start, I want to be building my confidence more than anything. I want a little bit more time to relax into the system. So I'm concentrating on just moving seamlessly, or as seamlessly as possible, between different shared windows. So if I share the screen for the whiteboard, great. Put some text on there for the student, great. Then I want to share a picture. So I do share again, put the picture up, they look at it, they talk about it. Then I go back, share again, the whiteboard, and I've got the same whiteboard with the text. So I'm getting good at that. Now that I'm confident, I can then start looking at some of the other features that I could bring into this. The other side of this, of course, is that if you're confident and you know all these features, it doesn't mean that your students will know. Your students will be having just as much of a hard time as you are adjusting to this change. So the slow rollout of features will be helpful to them as well. Go through things slowly so that they learn how to use something. Then when they're comfortable, introduce the next feature when appropriate. But don't go too fast with this. A couple of features is all you need to deliver a good lesson. Tip number 4, basically give yourself a break. This means 2 things. First of all, give yourself a break during the lesson. If you've got a 90-minute lesson, whoa, that's a long time to be online teaching this way. Yesterday, I had 3 one-to-one classes and I had 2 group classes. And granted, the group classes were of a shortened duration because it was the first time we were meeting online. But I could really feel it in my shoulders and in my neck and the back of my head. I was exhausted. I got home after work and I pretty much went straight to bed. I just couldn't function as a human being anymore. Teaching online is not like teaching in a classroom. Think about your field of view. If you are the sort of teacher like me who's relatively lazy and you take a seat and you put it in the middle of the classroom and you've got your students arranged in the traditional horseshoe, your field of vision when you're looking up is like this. It's, what is it, 120 degrees, something like that. Or if you turn your head, you can look there. You turn your head around, you can look there. You want to see what the students are doing. So you get up and you go over and you monitor. You crouch so that you can hear, but you're unobtrusive. You do all of those things in a classroom. Now imagine taking all of that and reducing it to it is that much in terms of your field of vision, because that's the screen. And for those 90 minutes, you're there. You're in the students' faces. They're in your face. They're always looking. They might even, in Zoom, they might have it on speaker view. So the active speaker takes up most of the window, and then you have the little thumbnail images at the top. I prefer the gallery view personally, where you've got all of the students at once. I want to be able to see everybody. But whichever way you've got it, it's a small world very suddenly, isn't it? And you're stuck in your chair, you've got your microphone attached, so you can't just get up and move around. So I think having a 5-minute break in the middle of a longer lesson is really important. Make sure that you keep hydrated as well. Even have a couple of little, unobtrusive kind of snacks. Obviously not carrot sticks. What's up, Doc? Something like that. No, maybe not that, but something, just so that you can keep yourself going through these lessons. So yeah, giving yourself a break physically is very important, but also mentally. Like I said before, this is a new thing for a lot of us. And if it's a new thing, it takes time to adjust. You can't expect the first lessons that you teach to be outstanding, wonderful lessons. The first lessons just need for you to be there, contacting your students, showing them that you're there. I think that's really the most important thing to make a start. And that brings us on to number 5, which is quite a simple tip really. If you need help, ask for help. There are so many people out there ready to help. You go onto Facebook and you see all of these groups and they're all posting stuff about teaching online and dealing with the virus and with remote working and everything like that. The British Council have set up things. Cambridge English are doing an online course with FutureLearn, and the discussion boards they're blowing up really. I went on to do this course and the first discussion board I saw had about 500 responses. Now obviously you're not going to read through all of those, but it really shows that there's a big community out there of people in the same position and they're all trying to help each other. If you need help, get in touch with me. I'm not much of an expert in these things, but sometimes it's enough just to talk. You can find me on Facebook, you can find me here on YouTube, you can even find me on Instagram if you really get desperate. It's always under that banner of Closely Observed. If you look for Closely Observed, wherever you go, you'll find me. I'm happy to help, but everyone is. Everybody who's in this situation, even if they don't really know what they're doing, they're willing to help, or at least to lend a sympathetic ear. And for me, this is one of the greatest things about EFL, and English language teaching generally. The majority of people that I've met who have kind of taken this on as a career or as some sort of vocation, they're passionate about it, but they are really good people. There are very few people I've met that aren't that nice. They're all great. Okay, well, almost all of them. If you're not great, you're probably not even watching this, so I think it's safe for me to say these things. Probably. You're great. You're watching this, you're great. You've probably even clicked the thumbs up thing at the top, and you've probably even subscribed to the channel. Okay, so those are 5 tips. I hope they help. Good teaching, good luck. Go and get it.